Hello everybody! Today I'm going to be doing a detailed guide to every item that was newly released in Season 3 for League of Legends. The items have now been out for long enough that I feel we can learn a lot, that we have learned enough to really talk about which items are good, who they're for, what situations they're useful in, and other things that are important to know. There's a lot of confusion surrounding some of these items, and I think people are buying them wrong often, so I thought it would be a good idea to go over the items and talk about each of them in depth, what they're useful for, how gold efficient they are, and whether or not you should buy them. For this video, I'm just going to be going over the basic and advanced items as well as the jungler items, so that is items that you can buy straight from the shop, items that you can build out of, items that you can buy straight from the shop, and the jungler items, which you require more advanced items to get, but I stuck these in because they go with the Spirit Stone, basically. So, jumping right into it, we have the Crystalline Flask, which costs 345 gold and sells for 138. This slideshow that I have here is just for visual reference. I did not put a whole lot of work into it, but it's just to give you something to look at and so I can write down like basic thoughts. So, what the flask does is it gives you 3 potion-like charges. They give you 120 HP and 60 mana over 12 seconds, and they refill every time you return to the fountain. What this means is that you need to use the flasks a little more than 7 times in order for it to be gold efficient compared to just buying health potions, or a little more than 9 times in order for it to be gold efficient compared to just buying mana potions. What this means, unfortunately for the Crystalline Flask, is that it's not very good. You usually won't use all those health potions or mana potions, or you'll be wanting more than just 3 charges in the lane. Like times when you want to have 9 health potions, you really want to have 9 health potions just so you can stay in the lane and not have to base all the time. Also, it has a huge upfront cost, and your early gold is extremely valuable. It'll help you get like a longsword and 2 potions, or boots and 3 potions, or cloth armor and 5 potions, or just 9 potions and 2 wards, which are common builds now. So the Crystalline Flask sort of loses out because that gold is so valuable. It's pretty much only useful for champions that push waves and then return to base. So Singed is a good example of a champion that can make good use of this. He can cast his ultimate, poison down a wave, recharge on Crystalline Flasks, poison down a wave, base, and then like teleport back to lane. Because he wants to return to base so frequently and he wants to push, Nidalee is another champion that this is reasonable on, then he's going to be refilling the flask frequently. The other issue with the flask is that often mana potions lose their value up into the mid-game, because after you hit level 4 or so, you more or less find that on most champions you don't have mana pool issues, and if you do, you're better off buying a flat mana item rather than continuing to sink gold into mana potions, like a Tear of the Goddess or a Chalice or something along those lines. Which means that Crystalline Flask is should be a rare buy, and you usually don't want to pick it up. Another time when it's okay is if you're a very slot-starved champion, like a support, who will often have, you know, green wards and pink wards and boots and an item component for like an Aegis and maybe a biscuit and maybe their like crappy ward that you get from the masteries, and just can't afford the slots for both health and mana potions, in which case Crystalline Flask can be a reasonable buy. But again, 345 gold is actually a lot if you happen to be playing support, and you're better off just buying like 1 or 2 health potions each time you go to base. You'll spend less overall, you can modulate your spending better, and you don't have to spend money on the mana, which will often just not help you. So, Crystalline Flask, bottom line, gold efficient, doesn't provide much value, you usually shouldn't buy it. Next up, continuing with the support item theme, we have the Sightstone, which will run you a cool 950 gold, including a ruby crystal, and 475 for the upgrade cost. It sells for 280. What this will give you is 180 health, which you get just from the ruby crystal, so you're paying entirely for the upgrade cost. You're paying the upgrade cost entirely for the ward passive, the ward active. It will give you 4 charges where you can drop wards, with up to 2 active at a time, and you refresh these when you go back to the fountain. This is extremely useful for support players who want to spend a lot of money on wards. You need to place I believe it is doing the math real quick in my head, 7 wards, no, 6 wards before it becomes gold efficient, which means that you'll actually hit that very quickly. 7 wards, sorry. 7 wards will make it gold efficient, which you will hit very quickly. It also lets you, because you get 4 wards, only 2 of which can be active at a time, it lets you just like randomly ward the brush. These wards, when placed, will still give 25 gold if killed by an enemy, but they don't cost you anything to place, so pink warding becomes much less efficient for your opponents. And just generally, this item is awesome for supports. It lets you ensure that you always have a ward in the lane brush and in the tri-brush, or in the lane brush and on the dragon. It lets you ward for vision during ganks. It's also very good for junglers, who will often have a high ward burden. It sort of replaces Wriggle's Lantern, which in the current metagame isn't incredibly efficient. And also for champions that can jump to minions, like it gets a special mention for Lee Sin and Jax and Katarina, who can use it to pull off ward jukes. If you think you're going to be warding your lane a lot and you want to have wards in your inventory for ward jukes, and the health doesn't hurt either, and you can afford the slot, it's worth considering. I wouldn't always get this on those champions though. It's very game situational. Bottom line on this item is you should pretty much always get it if you're playing support. It's very good, it's very gold efficient, and if you get it early you'll maximize the gold value from it, and you can keep up wards for your team. Wards obviously are the best item in the game, so an item that makes wards is generally speaking pretty good. Just as a note, because I forgot to mention this in the intro, all of this information is current as of the end of February 2013, so things may change in upcoming patches, obviously. If you're watching this a year from now, things will be different. But yeah, just bear that in mind. Anyways, upgrading from the Sightstone, we get the Ruby Sightstone, which will cost you 1550 gold total. That is 900 for the Sightstone, plus 475 for the Ruby Crystal, plus another 125 for the upgrade. It only sells for 620 gold. Incidentally, just backing up to the Sightstone, items that produce consumables, and the Crystalline Flask actually, items that produce consumables sell for nothing, which is another reason not to buy them. The Crystalline Flask is extraordinarily gold inefficient, even including the sell value, and Sightstone you usually don't want to sell, as well as Ruby Sightstone. Luckily for you, it's rare that you're going to have to sell the Sightstone or the Ruby Sightstone, and so the sell cost doesn't matter that much. It gives you 360 health, and it basically just upgrades the Sightstone to have an extra ward active and an extra charge, so 5 and 3 respectively, or 3 and 5 respectively rather, which is it's a decent upgrade. It's not like a huge upgrade, but most of the time it's just to give you a little bit of extra HP without taking up a slot, so it's good in the late game, but I wouldn't rush for this. It's obviously useful for supports, and basically anyone who wants a Sightstone also eventually wants a Ruby Sightstone, but you should spend your gold on essential items first, and leave this because it's a luxury. Next up, we have the Hunter's Machete, which will run you 300 gold and sell for 120. Its effect is it gives you 10% bonus damage to monsters. That's on everything. Anything that you do that does damage to monsters will do an extra 10%, so spells, auto attacks, everything. Basic attacks deal 10 bonus true damage to monsters. This, incidentally, is not upgraded by the 10% bonus damage. It's the only thing that isn't. Both of which are a unique passive, so you can't stack Hunter's Machetes. Essentially, every jungler should buy this item and 5 potions with their starting cash. There's a couple junglers who can get away with getting a ward, or getting something, you know, maybe Boots Pots on a jungler, or maybe Cloth 5, although Cloth 5 is just usually much less efficient than Machete 5. But I would recommend buying this on pretty much every jungler. You can even occasionally get this on top or mid laners who want to run and do the Wraith camp or the double golems or the wolves very quickly. If you're intending to build this into a Spirit Stone and then an eventual, usually a Lizard Elder if you're a top laner, or Spectral Wraith if you're a mid laner, but we'll talk more about that when we get to those items. So bottom line on this item, incredibly valuable, incredibly gold efficient, does everything you want it to do as a jungler. You should pretty much always buy it on a jungler. Very simple. This item was intended to be the jungle start, the jungle item, and it succeeds admirably, so buy it. Upgrading from the Hunter's Machete is the Spirit Stone, which will run you 700 gold, or 400 in addition to the Machete. Usually you just upgrade it directly from the Machete to the Spirit Stone, so it'll cost you 400, but you can buy the Fairy Charm and the Rejuvenation Bead separately, and then it's a 40 gold upgrade cost on top of that. It sells for 560, which I want to point out is an extremely high sell cost, which means that you can get the Spirit Stone early and then sell it later and not lose much. Like, you lose 140 gold. Chances are very good that you're going to come out ahead on gold value from buying the Spirit Stone. The effect is it doubles the passive percent bonus damage to monsters, and it'll give you 14 health per 5 and 7 mana per 5, just the health and mana from the Fairy Charm and the Rejuve Bead slightly upgraded. Extremely gold efficient, but it does only provide regen, which isn't a good stat most of the time. So, like, unless you're intending to run around the jungle a lot and run out of mana a lot and, like, donate your blue buff to the mid lane and so on and so forth, you can often just avoid this item. The Machete is usually good enough to jungle clear, and you can often just spend this gold on something else, like earlier boots of mobility, an earlier damage item. The great thing about this Spirit Stone, though, is that it upgrades into 3 possible further jungling items, which we'll talk about in a second, all of which are great, basically. So, bottom line on the Spirit Stone, buy it if you're intending to upgrade it, absolutely. Buy it if you want to sell it and think you can get a reasonable amount of value out of it in the meantime and, like, have nothing else to buy. Occasionally buy it on a laner if you're intending to upgrade to a further item. It does give you regen in the lane, which is reasonable. And but if you can avoid it and you can get damage or movement speed or something else, then you should do that instead, because those stats are better. So the first thing that the Spirit Stone upgrades into is the Spirit of the Ancient Golem, which will cost you a cool 2,300 gold, which is actually very cheap for a late game item. It runs the Spirit Stone, the 700 from the Spirit Stone, 1,000 from a Giant's Belt, and an additional 600, and sells for 1610, so you're losing actually some of the selling efficiency of the Spirit Stone. It gives you 5% more damage to monsters on top of the Spirit Stone, and keeps the regen the same, but what it does give you is 500 bonus health and 30 armor, as well as 35% tenacity, reducing crowd control effects by 35%. This makes you very tanky. The 30 free armor on top of the Giant's Belt is great, obviously. But this item is primarily useful for junglers who have already bought mobility boots, in other words, are not buying Mercury Treads, which is the other good tenacity item in the game, but still want tenacity. So a good example of a jungler like this is Lee Sin, who will often be the target of CC, Vi as well, or Hecarim, but they usually want the Lizard Elder instead. Xin Zhao as well will often be the target of CC, and often want to buy mobility boots. So this is a reasonable way to get tenacity. Now, of those 4 junglers that I mentioned, actually another one is Maokai, of the 5 junglers that I mentioned, only Maokai really benefits from this item significantly, mainly because the Lizard Elder is so much better for the others, or they don't require mana regen like Lee Sin. And the main problem with this item is that it's the other Giant's Belt upgrades, Warmogs, Randuins, Sunfire Cape, etc., are just so good. They're incredibly gold efficient and incredibly powerful, and you're usually better off just getting a Warmogs or getting a Randuins, and heroes that buy Giant's Belts usually don't care about CC, so the tenacity doesn't really help them. I would mainly suggest getting this item if you're very ahead based on mobility boots, and for whatever reason you don't want Lizard Elder, and you already have the Spirit Stone and a Giant's Belt, and don't want to build Warmogs, which means that this item doesn't often see that much play. So usually you're better off getting something else. But under those circumstances, this is a pretty good item. Next, we have probably the most powerful item introduced in Season 3, which is the Spirit of the Lizard Elder. 2,300 gold, so dead even in cost with the Ancient Golem. which runs you a Spirit Stone, a pickaxe, and 725 gold for the upgrade. Also sells for 1610. Continues to give you 25% bonus damage to monsters. Gives you 14 health regen per 5 seconds, 7 mana per 5, same as the Spirit Stone, as well as 50 bonus attack damage, so double the pickaxe damage, which is incredible. Like, you get a free pickaxe for less than the upgrade cost, which is ridiculous. 10% cooldown reduction, basically for free, as well as, excuse me, a bonus 15 to 66 based on your level, true damage on any attack and any spell, and my slideshow seems to have screwed up the last spells there, which is in a smaller font, but whatever. Over 3 seconds on any attack or spell that doesn't already apply a damage over time effect, which means any AoE effect will apply it to everybody in the AoE. 15 to 66 is just an incredible amount of true damage. Someone like Hecarim, who has a spammable skill, you know, with his Rampage, can apply it over and over again. Someone like it will apply on Singed Poison. It's insane how many things this applies on and how incredibly powerful it is. Even disregarding the passive, this item is already over the top in terms of gold efficiency. Just the damage, cooldown, and regen, ignoring the 25% bonus damage to monsters, ignoring the true damage, this item is already incredibly gold efficient. And when you add those things in, this is the single best item released in Season 3. You basically want it on anyone who can get it. An aggressive jungler who snowballs ahead makes the best use of this, but pretty much everybody wants it. Even laners can make really good use of this item, and there's a lot of laners who just get it. Like, if you lane Vi, if you lane Hecarim, I've seen it on Singed, I've seen it on basically, like, tons of people get this item. It's amazing. This is the reason that the other two items don't get seen very often, because Spirit of the Lizard Elder is just so good. Next, we have the Spirit of the Spectral Wraith, which only costs 2,000 compared to the other two's 2,300, which means that it's the Spirit Stone, a Hextech Revolver, and 100 gold, so you're paying 100 gold for, like, an enormous amount of stats. It'll sell for 1,400. It gives you the same 25% bonus damage to monsters. No longer gives health per 5, but gives a little more mana per 5. Gives you 50 ability power, which is a huge boost over the Hextech Revolver. Gives you 10% cooldown reduction, basically for free. Gives you 20% spell vamp, also the huge boost over the Hextech Revolver, and reduces your smite cooldown by 20 seconds, which helps you clear the jungle even faster. This item is extraordinarily gold efficient. It is incredibly powerful, and the only thing that holds it back is that there's not a huge number of junglers that want all of its effects. But a jungle Diana, a jungle Fiddlesticks, a jungle Amumu can make excellent use of this item and should probably buy it. This item is also very good on some laners. Diana comes to mind, as it lets you, clear camps, and it builds out of Spirit Stone, which is already very gold efficient in terms of regen. So this item is very good. If you are a jungler that needs all of its stats, you should buy it. Again, the only issue for this item is that not that many junglers need all of its stats, but this item is just very, very powerful, and pretty much always worth the buy if you want it. Moving off of jungler items, we come to the Seeker's Armguard, which will run you 1160 for 2 cloth armors, an amplifying tome, and 125 gold for the upgrade cost. It'll sell for 812, which again is a very efficient sell price. It gives you 30 armor and 20 ability power, which is the same as the 2 cloth armors and the amp tome, but will give you an additional up to 15 of each of those things for the 125 gold upgrade based on minions killed. It gives you half of each for each minion that you kill. It's gold efficient after killing a single minion, meaning that it gives you enough stats to justify its price after killing a single minion, and then you get an additional 29 minion kills, which makes it extremely gold efficient. It's an item that is designed to help APs fight ADs in lane, and it does that very well. It's much better in terms of gold efficiency and in terms of upgrade path than its counterpart for ADs, the Hex Drinker. So any AP-based character that's laning against an AD-based character will want this item, pretty much, early and often. It builds into one of the best items in the game in terms of gold efficiency and having a unique effect in Zhonya's Hourglass. And anytime you want armor and AP, you should buy this item. It's very, very good on AP-based top lanes. You know, Nidalees will buy it if they're against an AD. It's very good if they happen to put an AD mid against you, such as a Jace or a Pantheon. This item is just extremely good, worth buying on basically anyone who wants its stats. So if you can use both armor and ability power, get Seeker's Armguard. It's very strong. Finally, for advanced items, we come to Renunciation Hurricane, which is the second dud on this list. It runs you 2750, which is basically on par with a Bloodthirster for cost, slightly less than an Infinity Edge, more than Static Shiv or Phantom Dancer. It'll come out of a recurve bow at 2 daggers and 1,000 gold for the upgrade. It sells for 1925, which is a very inefficient sell price, not that you ever want to sell a high-tier item like this one. It will give you 70% attack speed, so you get basically no attack speed from the upgrade. So you're paying entirely for the passive from the upgrade. Your basic attacks, which is your basic attacks hit 2 additional nearby targets for 10 damage plus 50% of your attack damage, and those apply on hit effects. So the problem with this item is that it gives you a stat that isn't good by itself in only attack speed, because if you don't do damage or have critical strike or something in addition to attack speed is very inefficient. It builds out of very inefficient items. Dagger or recurve bow do very little for you by themselves, so the build path is awful. It has an extremely high upgrade price, which means that you're rarely going to be able to build it straight up. You're going to be stuck with the components for a long time, and as previously mentioned, dagger and recurve bow are shitty components. You don't want to have them in your inventory. The passive does not work with its stats because it scales off your attack damage and and the item only builds out of and the item only gives you attack speed. So the passive does not work with the statistics that the item gives you. And just all in all, it's extremely gold inefficient. It just doesn't give you the stats to make it worth the gold. Don't buy this item. It is terrible. This item is awful. You're always better off getting a Phantom Dancer for attack speed, which gives you, in addition to that, critical strike and move speed, or a Static Shiv, which gives you critical strike, move speed, and a passive that is almost as good, which builds out of a much better item in terms of the Zeal. And, you know, the passive does basically the same thing on a Static Shiv, in addition to hitting an extra target. And it's just a way more gold-efficient item. So, basically, I can't think of a character that would want Renunciation Hurricane ever. Also note that it only works for ranged characters, so you can't even buy this on a melee character, not that you would ever want to. And yeah, that's about it. This item is just bad. So, hopefully that helps. That is the end of basic and advanced Season 3 items. In the next installment of this series, I guess, I'm going to be giving you the, I don't forget what they call them, but Tier 3 and Tier 4 items, minus the jungler items for the new Season 3 items. If you guys like this feature, I can probably consider doing this for every item in the game at some point. So let me know in the comments what you thought. Please ask if you have any questions about any of these items, if I didn't cover anything, or if you disagree with any of my assessments. I feel like these items in particular are not very tricky, and it's the next set of items that are going to be the ones where I'm going to say controversial things. If the gold analysis of the items was useful, let me know. And yeah. Please feel free to comment, rate, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers, folks. GG.